Okay, well, let me start from the beginning.
Yeah,
Um,
please.
in March of 1965, I was 18 years old. The Vietnam War was going on, and I received my draft notice from the Army. I went to the Navy recruiter and asked them what I could do. And he says, "Go take your Army physical, and then we'll put you in the Navy." So I took my Army physical and I passed. Came back to the Navy recruiter, and he told me that I probably needed to go in by the end of March. So I did. 31st of March, I uh, I became a seaman uh, in the United States Navy and went to boot camp over in the Chicago area, Great Lakes Naval Training Center. This is in March. Wind blows all the time in Chicago. It was cold when we were getting out on the grinders, the large parking lots, I guess, um, to do our calisthenics and everything early in the morning. It's not a time that you forget, even though it was only 11 weeks of basic training. It was arduous. When when I got to basic training, after about 2 or 3 weeks, they uh, they send you over to I'll call it a selection area where you talked with individuals who were interested in having you work in their career field. Um, I wanted to be a radioman because I wanted to work on radios and have a skill when I got back out of the Navy after 4 years. When when I talked with the first gentleman, he said, "Well, your scores are pretty high. Why don't you go down to the end of the hall and talk to the people down there?" I asked him, "Well, are they radiomen?" He said, "Well, yeah, they've got radiomen." So, so I walked down to the end of the hall, and the communications technician radioman was the rating that they were talking about, and that sounded like something that I, you know, might be interested in. So I said okay. When I finished boot camp, I went to Pensacola, Florida for 6 months of training where I learned the International Morse Code. Um, we had, I don't know, the old style typewriters where you typed in a keyboard and through the I forget what they call it now, but
Was
whatever
it
it
like
was,
the reel or ream or something like that? Or
yeah, whatever it
yeah,
was, we threw that, you know, and kept typing. So that was a 6 month long school, and I scored pretty well in school. So they asked me where I wanted to go, and I said Bremerhaven, Germany. I said okay. So I got orders to Bremerhaven, Germany, and I thought it was for a normal 2 year tour. I was still relatively new to the Navy, so I didn't know what to expect. But I went over there and sat positions and became more proficient at my skill. And I think I was only there probably 4 months, and I got orders to the USS Liberty. Um, so I think it was 66. Must have been 66 when I got to uh, the Liberty. And my first couple of cruises were off the west coast of Africa. Nothing spectacular. Um, and we would normally go out for a three month cruise and then go back into home port over Norfolk, Virginia, and probably spend a month or two, getting the ship shape and bringing on stores for our next cruise. So in May of 1967, we had orders again to go to the west coast of Africa. And first port we pulled into was Abidjan on the Ivory Coast. This was on May 22nd or May 23rd. On the 23rd, we actually received orders, urgent message saying that we needed to proceed to Rota, Spain, and the Eastern Mediterranean at best speed. For the Liberty, that amounted to 18 knots. And that's with every boat rattling on the ship. We got to Rota, Spain. I think the transit from Luanda up to Rota was maybe, it might have been 6 days. I mean, it seemed like it took a while. But we got there and brought on stores, brought on 3 Marines. Bryce, you've already talked with, so he was the only surviving Marine after the attack. We also brought on, I think it was 3 other personnel, or maybe it was only 2. One was a NSA civilian, Mr. Blue, and the other was a CIA representative who came on as an E4 Navy guy. So we didn't realize that he was CIA until after the attack,
Really?
probably years afterwards. But as soon as we got to, got all our stores on board and everything, we pulled out of Rota, Spain and headed towards the Eastern Med. I think we got on station off from Sinai Peninsula late on June 7th. And we're probably overflown once or twice on the 7th. But the 8th is when the action really happened. The morning of 8 June, we were overflown, I'm going to say 5, possibly 6 times by reconnaissance aircraft. They had plenty of time to identify the ship, and we're always flying the American flag. And they were flying low enough that the people that were topside had, eyes on the planes and actually, waved to the pilots, and the pilots waved back. It was, they were friendly aircraft. They were Israeli aircraft. No obvious hostile intent. I had a day watch that day down in Radio Research 1, which was our branch collection position. The position that I sat was right up against the bulkhead or wall that led over to the comm center. That's important just because when I get a little bit further on here, you'll know why it's important. But that's where I sat typing, and copying code. I think about 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock, I rolled across the signal I didn't recognize. It was foreign language. And so I started copying it. And as I was copying, one of the guys from our processing and reporting center actually came over to my position and started taking the pages as I finished typing them he would take the pages over to the processing and reporting center for analysis and for reporting on. I didn't understand the importance of that until I went to Chow at about 11:30 with my buddy Bob Eisenberg. Bob was a Russian linguist, also a Hebrew linguist. He spoke 4 languages. And as we're going to Chow, he said, Larry, what you're copying is very important. It says that the comms indicate that they're uh, gearing up for an attack against a target. They didn't identify the target in the traffic, but you know they were talking about it. And he says, so it's very important when you get back after Chow, stay on it, which I did. At about 12:30 local time over there, the skipper called for a drill general quarters. And that was fairly common for the captain to do something like that, just to make sure that we were all familiar with our roles in the event of an emergency. So we had this chemical warfare drill that the captain, that was what our general quarters was for. It lasted about an hour. And when the drill ended, guys that were on their break actually went up topside to sunbathe. I mean, it was a beautiful day, sun shining, clear skies. The sea was fairly calm. There was about a 6-knot wind, I guess, but it wasn't. I mean, I've seen photos after the fact here that there were guys up there in their bathing suits just soaking up the rays.
Yeah, I've seen those.
So yeah, it's kind of funny when you think about it. But this is like 1:30, quarter to 2 in the afternoon, and it's just a few minutes away from when the attack happened at 2:00 local. The captain, I had heard, because I was down below.
Right.
I had heard the strafing, the actual shells ricocheting off the deck, and I thought it sounded more like someone was dragging a chain across the main deck, but it was actually the beginning of the strafing runs. Captain immediately came on the air and said, General quarters, this is not a drill. We're under attack. And everyone went to their general quarters station. I'm not sure where Bryce was at that time. I think he was down in Radio Research 1.
Yeah, I think it was like T206. I believe like the location on the ship where he was at, because he said he was right where the torpedo hit around
Okay.
that time.
Okay. The attack started, like I said, around 2:00, and I guess the air attack with the rockets, the cannon fire, 50 caliber armor piercing shells lasted about 25 minutes. The anyone who was topside, scrambled to go to their general quarters station, but at least 9 of the crew were, killed as a result of the, being topside. The next thing that happened, and these aircraft, when they came in, were all unmarked. We had no idea who was doing the attacking. Earlier in the day, when we were being overflown by Israeli aircraft, very clear, they had the Star of David on the side of the aircraft, and like I said, we all felt pretty comfortable being in that area, knowing that our ally had our back. But when the when the airstrike happened, the aircraft were all unmarked. You couldn't tell nationality. You couldn't tell anything. They were black aircraft. But after the assault by the aircraft, we actually had another set of aircraft come out with napalm, and they dropped napalm on the superstructure. So our bridge area and that whole area, topside, was engulfed in flames. It was an inferno. Again, I'm down below. I'm not seeing this. I just, after the fact, I'm hearing about it, and I could see the damage to the ship after everything was over. It was obvious that it was, it was massive. The napalm attack happened for, I don't know, however long it took them to drop their ordinance against us, and then things were kind of quiet for a period of time. I don't know. As going through it, everything seemed like it was dragging on forever and ever, but it may have only been 10 or 15 minutes before the 3 torpedo boats came out. And I'm not sure how long it took them before they came into, torpedoing range, but they had the flags, the Star David flags on all 3 of the torpedo boats. Again, I'm not topside, so I didn't see that. And I'm not sure how many of the people that were topside in the bridge area and that I'm sure they must have seen it. And that'll become more obvious a little bit later in this discussion. But the torpedo boats came up. They launched 5 torpedoes at us. Fortunately for us, the skipper was able to maneuver out of the path of 4 of those 5. The 5th one hit right in our comm center. Right, it hit a beam, an I-beam, direct, and it exploded immediately. I was no longer, my general quarters station was actually one level above where the torpedo came in. So I was one deck higher and right above where the torpedo came in. It was deafening. It was just, the explosion was massive. It killed 25 servicemen in that communications ops center. It wiped out our ops, wiped out the maintenance shop, the processing and reporting shop, and that bulkhead that I had been sitting on during the day was completely obliterated. And all of the sailors that were in the Radio Research 1 were immediately thrown into the water. We all got bounced around when the torpedo hit. I got jettisoned to the overhead. Had a minor concussion. Came back down. The equipment and the rack that I've been sitting at in my general quarters station, all the equipment had blown out of the rack. It was just, the whole room was a mess. The first thing I did was try to recover from what just happened, because when the captain called for general quarters and Clyde Way and I went up to the next level, when he mentioned the general quarters and prepare for torpedo attack, we kind of looked at each other like, what do you do for a torpedo attack? I mean,
Right.
we didn't train for something like that in the Navy. But so Clyde and I got out of our position, went over to the bulkhead wall, and sat on the floor and waited for the torpedo to strike. When it did, we both got jettisoned to the overhead and back down. I think that's when I got injured. I had three gashes in my right leg, on my thigh. I didn't know it at the time because my adrenaline was pumping so hard that I didn't feel it. I just, so much else was going on, and we had all these people down below us that were in a flooded compartment. I mean, the water was rising, and we had to get them out of there. So Clyde and I, Lieutenant J.G. John Johnson, and Lieutenant Bennett, Maurice Bennett, went to the hatch that we had dogged down, and we opened up the scuttle in the top of the hatch. It's a little circular hole that if you didn't want to open the whole hatch for fear that the water might come up, having that little scuttle open, we out of the the flooded area below. But that just wasn't efficient. We couldn't get a mass exodus with just that. So we
Right.
ended up opening up the hatch, and everybody got out. Everyone who was still alive, we thought were out of there. Went to the door leading into our secure spaces and handed out life jackets to everyone that was coming out. After the last person came to me, and got their life jacket, I went back to the hatch to see if there was anything else they needed me to do, and we decided that the water was rising too fast. We needed to dog down the hatch, but before we did that, Lieutenant Bennett made a emotional plea into the spaces below where the water was, and he said, if anyone is still alive, if you can hear us, pound on a pipe, yell, do something, and we'll come in and get you. And we didn't hear anything, didn't see anything. And he says, okay, we're going to have to dog the hatch down, which we did. I went from there up to a casualty collection station up at the Chief's Mess. There was a third class corpsman at that casualty collection station. He was working on injured sailors at the time. And shortly after I got up there, they brought in our postal clerk, John Spicer. John had been outside fighting a fire and got hit by a rocket left side of him. Just ripped him to shreds. But he was still alive. And they brought him into the casualty collection station. Ernie Gallo and I did mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on him to try and keep him alive. The corpsman came in and said, he's not getting enough air into his lungs. I'm going to have to do a tracheotomy. So this third class corpsman, slit him in the throat and did a tracheotomy. And then we used to pump to try and pump air into his lungs. It probably, I don't think he lasted 10 minutes, 15 at the most. And he was too far gone. But with all that happening, I was short of breath. I was going to faint. I was going to become a casualty if I didn't get outside and get some fresh air. So I got permission to go just outside the hatch and squat down, so that I wasn't in the line of fire, and get some fresh air before I came back inside. I hadn't been out there, I don't think it was a minute. And Jeff Carpenter, a first class petty officer, came by, said, "Bowen, go back to the fantail to be the phone talker." Our phone talker, the original phone talker, Larry Weaver, been seriously injured, and he'd been taken down to the dispensary for triage. So I went back to the fantail, and became the phone talker. I was communicating with the bridge, letting them know that I was back on the fantail, and they wanted me to keep my eyes open for the 3 torpedo boats, which were back on the horizon, directly after the ship, but they were, I don't know, 15, 20 nautical miles away, and just doing nothing initially. I've been back there maybe 10 minutes, 15 at the most, and I saw the wakes of those 3 torpedo boats. I reported that to the bridge, and the captain came over the intercom and said, "Prepare for second torpedo attack." Where I was at, I figured I'm a dead man. I really didn't expect to live through another torpedo attack, and I think it would have, had they fired more torpedoes, it would have absolutely sunk the ship and killed all of us on board. But when they came back up, I saw the flags of David, the Star of David flags on the torpedo boats, and that's when I first knew that it was actually Israel that had been doing the attacking. Up until that time, I still thought it was an unidentified aircraft. And what I didn't mention was, I guess, well, it was before the torpedo attack, when we were under attack by the aircraft, we didn't have any comms. The aircraft had wiped out all of our 50 caliber machine guns, which we had 4, and wiped out all of our transmitting antennas. Everything that was a hot antenna was destroyed by heat-seeking missiles. We had one antenna that had been taken offline because it wasn't functioning properly, and so it was cold. It hadn't been operating, and they didn't hit that one. So Terry Halbardier, an E4, who's an electronics technician, 3rd class, took it upon himself to run a coax cable out to that antenna. He had to climb the mast. He had to, hardwire or jury rig this coax cable to the antenna so that we could get a distress signal out, because the Israelis were jamming our distress signals and all of our comms. So when Terry did that, he was wounded during his efforts there, but he managed to get it hooked up, and we got our distress signal out probably 5 to 10 minutes after the attack had started, and it was picked up by the USS Saratoga, an aircraft carrier and part of 6th Fleet. The Saratoga immediately scrambled aircraft to come to our aid, and notified, USS America, where Admiral Geis was at, and told the Admiral what he was doing, and the Admiral also, scrambled aircraft to come to our aid. Shortly after they scrambled aircraft, Defense Secretary Robert McNamara got on the line to 6th Fleet and said, "Recall those aircraft." I don't know that he gave them a reason other than the fact that I'm your commanding officer as Secretary of Defense, and I'm telling you to recall those aircraft. So they did. And the speculation in the Sixth Fleet was that the aircraft had been recalled because earlier in the day, the Sixth Fleet had been conducting a nuclear weapons drill with their aircraft. And, Washington may have thought that they still had nuclear warheads on board. And Joe Tully, the captain of the USS Saratoga, reconfigured his aircraft and sent out, more aircraft. And Geist did the same thing, Admiral Geist. Again, they didn't get to the horizon before they were recalled by McNamara. And he told him, he said, I told you to put those planes on the deck, recall those aircraft. Admiral Geist said that he wanted it from higher authority. So Johnson got on the line and said, I don't care if the ship and everyone on board goes to the bottom of the Med. I'm not going to embarrass an ally. All these years, it'll be 50, 58, 59 years. I've wondered how Johnson knew that it was Israel that was
Right.
doing the attacking because we didn't know, until after the fact. So anyway, the aircraft got recalled, and we were left out there in the middle of the Mediterranean, actually 13 miles off the coast of Sinai Peninsula, to fend for ourselves. Our 450 caliber machine gun mounts had been blown away. We were dead in the water after the torpedo attack. There was really nothing that we could do. We had the boilers were offline at that point, so there was no way for us to get underway for a while until they brought the boilers back on. It wasn't until 17 or 18 hours later, the next day, when the USS Davis and the USS Massey came alongside to help us. They were the first two ships from the Sixth Fleet that got to us. Later that day, the America and the Saratoga and the rest of the entourage showed up. But I mean, it was helpful because we still had 174 people who were injured that needed medical attention. We only had on board one lieutenant, Dr. Pfeiffer, who was the lieutenant, and then he had a first class corpsman and a third class corpsman, and everybody was doing triage and trying to help those that were seriously injured. I went down to the mess decks, which became our, onboard dispensary, and helped throughout the night until the next day when the Sixth Fleet arrived, and then we offloaded the more seriously injured to the America, to the Little Rock, to the Saratoga. I was just looking back on it. I mean, it's still vivid in my mind, but looking back on it, everything was just kind of I don't know, something that you'd expect to see in the movies, but
Yeah.
not something that you'd live through. So the next thing for us was the Sixth Fleet escorted us to Malta, and that's where we had the ship pull into dry dock. They drained the water out of the dry dock, and then those of us that were considered walking wounded and those that hadn't been wounded at all but were CTs were detailed to go back into those flooded compartments and recover the 25 bodies. and body parts. I volunteered to go in on the first recovery team because I wanted to find out what happened to my buddy Bob Eisenberg. The first casualty that I discovered was a Marine. We got him into a body bag and got him lifted up to the next deck, so that he could be transferred over to, I guess a reefer someplace so that they could put the bodies in cold storage for a while until they could get them back to the States. I don't remember who the second individual was, but he was, pretty much a full body, as was a Marine. The third body that I recovered, though, was that of Bob Eisenberg, and he had taken shrapnel in the chest and right in the heart area, and died instantly. So I wanted to be able to go back to Minnesota with the body and tell his family that Bob didn't suffer. He died instantly. And I didn't know whether or not the Navy would allow me to do that or not. As it turned out, they didn't allow me to do that. They have a group of people that are trained to go out to families and give the family a flag and thank them for allowing their son to serve. And but I don't think they ever gave any kind of details to the family about what your son went through. And his mom and his dad and his sister all lived in Minnesota, and I wanted to be able to tell them, and I couldn't. That bothered me for an awful long time. About 10 or 15 years ago, I got contacted by a nephew of Bob's, and it was either on Facebook or it probably was on Facebook, and we started chatting back and forth. I started providing them with USS Liberty memorabilia. Told them what I knew about Bob. When we were back in port in Norfolk, Bob and I would drive up to New York, which was the state that I was born in, and he would visit my family, and we'd do that on weekends when we both had liberty that weekend. So we were pretty close. And that's bothered me all these years. I still have I have PTSD and I have nightmares. I don't sleep well, but that's just part of going through something as devastating as the attack. We were sitting ducks out there, and then our government abandoned us, just left us there to, hopefully sink, I guess. I mean, Israel apparently had already apologized, saying it was a mistaken identity, which was bull. I mean, there's no way that you would mistake our ship for the Egyptian ship that they said they thought it was. The Egyptian ship was a rusted out horse carrier that was, at a dock in Egypt. It certainly wasn't a battleship of any type. And,
As
our ship was, oh, go ahead.
as efficient as they are with intelligence, I figure they would have known that anyway before the attack, the
Oh,
location of that ship.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, with all the surveillance that they had done in the morning of the 8th up to the time of the attack, it was they knew exactly who we were. They knew exactly what we were doing. They knew all of our frequencies so that they could jam them so that we couldn't get a signal out, uh, including the international distress signals frequencies. And so it was who they were trying to kid, I don't know. And for our government to accept their apology as a mistaken identity is just absolutely ridiculous. The cover up for that attack started almost immediately. It definitely started before we got to Malta because um, Admiral Kidd had come on board our ship and took us in little groups uh, and asked us to tell him what had happened, what we saw, and then put his stars back on and said, okay, now I'm an admiral again. If you ever say anything to anyone about what happened, I'll have you in prison, fine you, or both. And we, you know, I mean, I was an E5 at the time. I uh, I was scared to death. I mean, an admiral tells you not to say anything, and I didn't say anything. But I worked for the NSA as well, so all
Yeah.
my duties were were secure. It was all classified. So for me, it was more like it's just another secret I have to keep. It doesn't help your family when you can't tell them what you're doing. Uh, and it was 50 years before I opened up and started, actually what I would call therapy, because talking about it has been therapeutic for me. I'm no longer bottling it up inside and having thoughts about, well, what's going to happen if I tell Trenton what's going on.
Yeah.
They're going to come knocking on the door and take me away. uh no, I don't. I mean, there's books out now, there's DVDs, there've been, I mean, I don't know if you saw the Phil Turney interview with Candace Owen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so that's probably the biggest audience that
Yeah.
we've hit, um, with our true story, and that's all we're trying to do is get the truth out. But the American public hasn't been told the truth. I don't know that they ever will. I really don't. I
Yeah.
we're trying to get it out, but
With the current events, it's a mountain to climb.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
right, and it's I mean, we're still going to do what we're doing, and hopefully it'll get someone's attention. Maybe your
Yeah.
listeners will be able to talk to their representatives and say, "Hey, whatever happened to the USS Liberty back on June 8th, 1967?" Uh, and see what kind of response they get,
Yeah.
because we're pushing Congress to try and get recognition for our 34 fallen brothers. Um, and if we can get some recognition for them, that's great. Uh, the crew's never been publicly recognized. Even
Yeah.
when the ship came back into port after getting repaired enough to cross the Atlantic, uh, they it wasn't like they had congressional representatives at the pier waiting to give give the skeleton crew a warm welcome. Didn't happen. So I don't know. Like you say, it's a mountain to climb,
Yeah.
but well, we're going to keep at it.
Well, I saw it was March of 25. Phil Turney got anti-Semite of the year. They
we're,
have like a contest, I guess. First time I had heard about it, but
we we're not anti-Semitics.
yeah,
We're
obviously.
we're I mean, Bob was a Jewish man.
Yeah. Yeah.
my best friend on the ship, and I've got Jewish friends. I mean, it's I don't hate the Jewish people. I I'm very upset with the Zionist group that attack us, uh, and I'm very upset with our government for accepting the uh, the mistaken identity, you know,
Yeah.
excuse that Israel gave.
So when the planes were first doing their strafing pass, the flag was flying, correct? And it was swapped out with a bigger flag beforehand.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep, yeah. I guess the first flag may have been torn up by the strafing, and we hadn't been napalmed yet, so it's not like it was burning. Uh, but the skipper said, I want you to raise holiday colors, and that's a much larger flag, and that was flying for the duration of the attack. It's actually on display at the Cryptologic Museum in Fort Meade, Maryland, or was. I don't know if it's still there or not. But so
So it was replaced during the attack then? It wasn't replaced beforehand?
no, it was replaced during the attack.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I looked at the National Archives where, like President Johnson, you could go in and see like any of his phone calls or messages he sent during the 6 Day War. And I seen where he contacted Russia to let them know the Liberty was attacked, but he never, unless they just haven't published it, there could still be things redacted. But I've never seen a message that he got from Israel saying that they mistakenly attacked. So how, like you said, how he knew it was them before anybody else is a head scratcher.
Well, again, long after the fact, we the crew had heard that Israel on the 7th of June told Johnson in some form of communication that if he didn't get the ship out of the area, that they would take care of it, that they would attack it. Um, that may have been when the Pentagon sent out a message designed to come to the Liberty uh, to tell us to move 100 nautical miles off the coast. We never received that message. It, it went to the Sixth Fleet, and the Sixth Fleet was supposed to have support for our comms while we were in the Med, but they never sent the message to us. That's when the Navy held their court of inquiry while we were still in Malta. It was a 7 day sham. They they the Navy was only concerned about the comms and how poor the comms were. The fact that we didn't get the message for the 100 nautical miles off the coast. They weren't looking for culpability with Israel or anyone else. They just didn't, you know, that wasn't the purpose of the Navy Court of Inquiry. And you've probably heard, you know, stories that, well, there was an investigation and everything. There've been several congressional investigations. There's never been one congressional investigation, not one. The closest thing to it was Admiral Moore doing his independent commission of senior officers, where they went out and talked with crew members, talked with, uh, I guess, government staff. They even talked with Israeli people, and then issued their um Thomas More commission report that verified what the crew's been saying all along, that it was a deliberate attack, and one of the recommendations that commission had was for a full and impartial investigation into the attack. Uh, I think they, would have liked it to be a congressional investigation, but the wording in the report said that they wanted, if not a congressional investigation, that the Navy should conduct a full and impartial investigation with congressional oversight. Congress being manipulated by APAC, they, Moore gave them an out. Says, look, let the Navy do the investigation. They're military. They're not governed by APAC.
Yeah.
And have congressional oversight saying that Congress is going to review it afterwards or whatever. But it would have been the Navy doing it. But that report was actually read into the congressional record either in 2004 or 2005 when Admiral Moore was honored for his years of naval service. And as part of that process, they actually put in his report. Of course, nothing was ever done. No one took any action on the recommendations of that committee. So it was, again, just another door closed in our face with nothing coming up about it.
So did Isaac Kidd ever get any pressure about his conversation with you guys later on?
Not that I'm aware of. That was
Oh,
part of the cover up.
oh, I didn't know if he retired or years later, if he ever come back and told his side of anything or.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And then uh Eisenberg, you said he spoke Hebrew?
Yes. Yeah, he was his mom and dad were Jewish, and
Yeah.
he was raised in a Jewish home.
Yeah. So, because that's one of the main arguments when people bring up like is it El Arish or Arish? I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but the massacre that occurred there. And they said that Israel was afraid that the Liberty had picked up transmissions regarding that massacre. But people argued if there were Hebrew linguists that were on board.
Well, there were. In fact, I think one of it might have been Blue coming from NSA. I think he might have been a Hebrew linguist. The Marines were Russian linguists. Um, but I think uh, Alan Blue was a Hebrew linguist, and I know Bob was. So
And you guys picked up them pretty much discussing and plotting the attack on the Liberty beforehand with the.
in hindsight, I'm going to say yes, Trenton. That's probably what I was copying and what they were supposedly analyzing and reporting back to NSA. There was a an Air Force mission, airborne mission in the Eastern Med that day, and we've talked with at least one of the crew members who said that he was copying the pilots to their ground station when the pilots reported that they saw the American flag, it's an American ship, and they were told by the ground controller to hit the target. We and he this Norwicki, I think was the guy's name, Norwicki, and he was at NSA in the late 1970s, and he said he saw the tapes. He saw that they still had them. We've tried to get them from under Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
No way. I don't know if they've destroyed them since, but they're certainly not forthcoming in providing any of that.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, which if I don't know if you're allowed to talk about any of that, but if your later career in the NSA, if anybody had asked you about it or if you had any opportunity to talk about it within NSA.
Not really. I mean, people that I worked with knew that had been on the Liberty, but I think most of them probably knew that we weren't supposed to talk about it. So, like I said, it was 50 years for me before
Yeah.
I started, talking about it at all. Uh, had never talked about it to my family, and when I got married, my wife, the kids, nothing. Uh, I did see the NSA report. It was a top secret report
Yeah.
that talked about the USS Liberty, and I actually had a copy of it at my desk until I retired in 2008. Um, and the report told me nothing. I mean, there was no smoking gun. There was nothing to indicate that, you know, we knew about that it was Israel doing the attacking or anything like that. That's what I was looking for. I was hoping that maybe I'd find something in
Yeah.
their highly classified report that would be, you know, beneficial for us as we move forward trying to get a congressional investigation. But it primarily just talked about the lack of communications, the fact that we didn't get our 100 nautical mile message on the, you know, nothing that was significant.
The thing I find interesting was whenever I looked into like the victory conversion program, and then you had the Liberty and then the Pueblo, we threatened to use nuclear weapons whenever they uh, took over the Pueblo. Was it North Korea when they
Yes.
boarded the
Yep.
ship?
Yep.
And
In
then,
January 1968.
yeah. And then here, you guys, they try to kill every single one of you, and you were blackmailed and threatened to keep quiet. So the contrast between the two under the same program, I find pretty interesting.
Well, once again, you're talking North Korea,
Yeah.
a a terrorist country, certainly not an ally, uh, and then you've got Israel. Our so-called eyes and ears in the Middle East. Um,
Yeah.
I I don't know. The fact that our government is still catering to Israel and what's going on over in the Middle East blows my mind.
Yeah.
It's I don't see any strategic reason for us to be, you know, over there fighting a war now. Um, and I'm not sure what the strategic reason was before when they were fighting, Iraq.
Yeah.
Um, it's just another. I don't know that it was a false flag like ours was, but
Yeah.
the well, we had
When,
that one. Oh,
oh,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say we had that one incident when um, the young um, president, uh, you had you had the dad whose first name was Herbert. Um, I can't think of the president's last name, from Texas.
Um, I can look real quick.
Well, yeah, there was a father and son that were president. I just for the life of me, I just a mind blank.
Well, for some reason, it's not one to tell me.
Would have been in the 90s.
Yeah. I was going to bring up Johnson was kind of known for false flag initiatives, wasn't he? There was a situation, what I don't know how much before prior to the Liberty, but trying to say a ship was attacked or sunk.
The Gulf of Tonkin.
Yeah.
You know, they had a ship supposedly attacked over there, which got us actively involved in Vietnam.
So it makes you wonder if it was a reason why they were unmarked was to try and get us involved with Egypt at the time.
Absolutely. In fact, the Strategic Air Command had been put on alert in the morning of the 8th with orders to fly to Egypt and drop nuclear bombs on Cairo. Provided, I guess, they got the word from the president to get airborne and do that. And the only thing the president was waiting for was for the Liberty to sink. And we didn't sink. So
Huh.
they, I forget, there's another Air Force guy out in Nebraska who contacted me to tell me, I don't know if it's when I was the president of the Liberty Veterans Association, but he contacted me to tell me that, they had been put on alert at 4 a.m., went to the ready room and were just waiting for the word to get airborne. And, he said that they were headed to Egypt. Would have
Sac-
been if had they gotten, the message.
Sacrificing liberty.
Yep, yep.
But
Yeah, the for your listeners, the 4-part docuseries "Sacrificing Liberty" is a true account of what happened back on June 8th, 1967, and the aftermath. Um, it's lengthy. It's a 4.5 hour um, set of DVDs that tell the story from the Liberty veterans' perspective, but it also has interviews with McNamara and other members of the administration. It's very, very well done. Uh, True News did an excellent job.
yeah. Yeah, with our generation right now, it's a hot topic because we see what's going on right now. Then you do a deep dive, and it's not just the Liberty. There's repetitive incidents where there's just a constant betrayal, and we're like, it has nothing anti-Semitism that doesn't have anything to do with it. But
No,
we're
no,
thinking we're like, what the hell? If China or Russia were to do us as they have done us, there'd be a war right now.
absolutely, absolutely. Just like there would have been, I guess, with North Korea when they took the Pueblo. But you know, I guess 83 men would be expendable rather than getting involved in a full blown World War III, because Korea was supported by China
Yeah.
and also by Russia. I mean, it would have been a big war. So I'm sure that they did everything they possibly could to negotiate the release of the crew. Never got the ship back, but they got all but one member of the crew. One member of the crew died while in captivity, but that was it.
Hmm. Well, is there anything you'd like to add?
Now the big thing is, again, for your listeners, contact your representatives. You know, ask them to investigate the USS Liberty June 8th, 1967 attack. Everyone knows that it was an attack that was, you know, the IDF from Israel. Um, yeah, if they could do that, if they want to go out and look at our website, USSLiberty.org, it's
Yes.
uh, it's up to date. We're trying to get all crew members' photographs on that website. It's got the interview with Phil Turney and Candace Owen, um, and some of the other podcasts that we've done. I think they've got clips from the various podcasts, so you'll see some of us that are doing podcasts um, on that, and I'm going to continue to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm hoping nobody's going to come knocking on my door, but I'm not saying anything classified.
Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah,
see.
I got a hat and a keychain from the Liberty website. And it's awesome. I get a lot of compliments while I wear my hat out and about. I got
Yep.
a couple
Well, I've,
pins
I've
on
got
there.
mine on. Yep.
Yeah, I got a hat like that. I don't wear it. I brought it in when I interviewed Bryce, and I had him sign the bill of it. He put old Sarge on it with his signature, and I
Yeah.
got his
Yep.
book that he signed. So,
Okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah. I'm not a book writer. I so I mean, Phil Turney, if you can get him on,
oh,
he's
I'd
written.
love that.
Yeah. He's got, I think, 3 books out.
Yeah,
So but he was topside, so he saw the action firsthand when the bullets were still flying, and that was those of us that were down below decks just heard it. I actually saw armor piercing shells coming through the skin of the ship into the area that I was sitting at my general quarters station. I saw tracer bullets,
yeah,
um, and it was like, you know, any one of those could have been a live round, and I wouldn't be talking to you today.
yeah,
But
yeah. That's what part of the reason I was telling some of my state reps. Reason why I wanted Missouri to recognize June 8th as USS Liberty Remembrance Day is we have Bryce Lockwood, who lives here in Missouri, but Lenall, who was on the ship, he was one of the first, I believe, to die in the first round of fire from the jets. He
yep.
was from Washington, Missouri.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so Missouri does have ties to the ship where I feel like they owe it to at least recognize the day for Remembrance Day.
Well, and I saw where Missouri had done that. I actually sent a resolution to my state senator asking for a congressional um, declaration of June 8th as USS Liberty Remembrance Day, uh, not only for this year, but for every year, to make it
Yeah,
forever. Um, I also sent a copy of that resolution to the Speaker of the House, um, Mike Johnson, and asked him to do the same thing. So we'll see where that goes.
yeah,
It's, I think because it's still to this day very controversial. It's getting something done at Congress is going to be next to impossible.
yeah. The way I see it, if it truly was an accident and they feel so terrible about it, and our government regrets it, or however they want to say it, then they really shouldn't have a problem to at least give Remembrance Day. I mean, at least they
Yeah.
could do is start that. If it really truly was an accident, what's the problem with a Remembrance Day?
Hmm. Yeah. No, I don't believe that's asking too much,
No,
and
there's
we'll take that as I don't know, a token of their so-called support for our mission. Get some recognition for the crew and some for not specifically for the 34 fallen,
Yeah.
but as the ship and the crew itself.
Yeah, to me, it's at least a start to something. I mean, at least it gets people younger than me to when they see it on a calendar to ask questions and look it up. You
Yeah.
know.
Well, and like I said, the USS Liberty.org website has a lot of information about the attack. And hopefully your listeners can, pull that up and get some more information. It was not a mistaken identity. It was absolutely a deliberate attack. And I, you're certainly not going to get any crew member to say anything different than that.
Right.
Just, and,
And I'm gonna go with the guys who were on the ship. I
yeah,
don't know. I don't know how
I
else to
mean,
put it.
we're firsthand eyewitnesses.
Yeah.
There's, we know what was going on over there, and it was deliberate. And if all of these pieces, some of which I've mentioned, um, were ever compiled to go in and request a congressional investigation, like the comms, whatever they were, to Johnson saying, if you don't get that ship 100 nautical miles off the coast, um, we're going to sink it. I mean, that's what they told him, and I, I think it was in a message. I don't think it was verbal. I think it was in a message. Um, there's just so many reasons why uh, it's obvious to us that it was a deliberate attack.
Yeah.
But those pieces of information aren't getting out to the public because it's still covered up.
Yeah.
Yep.
You might have to refresh my memory, but was it 2017? There was an article that was released about one of the fighter pilots objected to the attack, and they were ordered to continue anyway.
Yes. Yeah, it was. I don't remember if it was 2017 or not. But yes, I remember that. Um, and one of the pilots, it might have been that one, um, returned to base without firing on the ship. He was punished for it. Pete McCloskey from California actually interviewed him when he was here in the States. And Pete's written a document that talks about that, his meetings with the pilot, the the fact that the pilot had radioed that it was an American ship, and they were told to attack it anyway. Pete's no longer with us, or I don't think he is. He's been in pretty serious shape here in the last year or whenever. Um, but his wife's still alive. I talk with her occasionally. But yeah, there's a lot of information out there. Just you really have to dig to
Yeah.
uncover it. We've got a FOIA um, lawsuit against the National Security Agency that Michelle Kanukin out in Seattle and I put forth, requesting the release of some 300 pages of classified information. Uh, it involves the NSA and the CIA documents, and a congressional report that went to the National Security Agency. And to date, there hasn't been a formal ruling to get those documents redacted, I guess, and released. The judge has the latest um, appeals from the NSA, and our rebuttal uh, that she's looking at over in the state of Washington to before she makes a ruling. I expect that ruling to be this summer at the latest, because they've already had their court time.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, I don't want to keep you too long. I'd love to keep going, but also it's been almost hour and a half already. So,
Yeah, no, that's fine. Like I said, if there's specific questions that your viewers have, they come back to you. If you want to, you know, send me an email or whatever, I'll try and answer anything I can.
okay.
So
All right. Well, I appreciate it. And I'll tell you the same thing I told Bryce. I know whenever it happened and you guys got back, you were forgotten about or told not to talk about it, but you're not going to be forgotten now. My
well,
generation, we're pretty PO'd about it. So,
yeah, well, I appreciate it. I'm glad that your generation is, you know, picking up the torch and running with it. We as survivors want our story to be told. We want the truth out, and you know, it's people like yourself and your generation that's going to have to carry on for us. I mean, I'll be 80 in May, and I don't know how much longer I've got. Bryce is already in his 80s,
yeah.
so we're not spring chickens.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you very much for having me.
Yep. The
If we
pleasure is
needed,
all mine.
well, like I said, it's therapeutic for me to be able to talk about it, and I just feel a little more relief every time I have a chance to tell the story, and hopefully, help your listeners to maybe get frustrated enough to contact their representatives and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, this this needs to be looked at. Don't just sweep it under the rug like it was done back in 1967."
Yeah.
So, well, again, thank you, and if we need to do it again, I'll be here.
All right. Yeah. I'd love that. If anything important comes out this summer, if they make a ruling on it, or if you got new information you'd like to talk about, my line's always open for you.
Great, great. I'll remember that.
All right.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you.